Now begin.
Good evening and welcome to the second election forum of 2022. I am Laura Weese, the co-chair of the Election Forums Committee, along with my colleague Sam Sperry. This forum is also co-sponsored by the First Hill unit of the League of Women Voters. Madeline Betts is the unit leader. Tonight, we're pleased to welcome three candidates for U.S. Congress 7th District. Incumbent Pramila Jayapal, her opponents Paul Glumaz and Cliff Moon. Jesse A. James, who was unable to join us after all, will not be here tonight. What does the job of U.S. representative entail? As you all know from Civics 101, the House of Representatives, along with the Senate, comprise the legislative branch of the U.S. government. And this is all spelled out in the Constitution. The main duty of the House is to pass legislation. Bills become law if they're passed by the Senate and signed by the President. In addition, the House has two exclusive powers. They initiate all revenue bills. They have the power to impeach federal officials and the power to elect the president if no candidate received a majority in the Electoral College. The House is made up of 435 voting members elected in single member districts in each state on the basis of population. Three qualifications set out in the Constitution are: the members must be at least 25 years of age, a citizen of the United States for the past 7 years, and at the time of election, an inhabitant of the state they represent. Members of the House receive a salary of $175,000, which has not changed since 2009, plus what's called an MRA. It's a member's representational allowance to cover expenses of their representational duties. Office expenses, official mail are included in that. They also are eligible for a pension at age 62 after serving 5 years, and they have the same health benefits as other federal employees. The candidates will be talking about their differing views on current issues, but I found out some similarities between two of the candidates. Both Representative Jayapal and Mr. Glumaz immigrated to the United States. Representative Jayapal from India and Mr. Glumaz from Mexico. Both spent their initial days in the US in Washington, D.C. Ms. Jayapal attending Georgetown University and Mr. Glumaz attending D.C. public schools, elementary through high school, before continuing studies at Columbia University. Both candidates have been with us before, Ms. Jayapal as a candidate and then as our elected representative, and Mr. Glumaz as a candidate running for city council last year. Now, joining these two candidates are is Cliff Moon. As I mentioned, Jesse James is not able to join us tonight. Mr. Moon earned degrees at the University of Washington in oceanography and civil engineering. His professional experience includes consulting oceanographer, water resource engineer, and corporate president of Moon Construction Company. He has served as a visiting faculty lecturer teaching at universities in Kazakhstan and India. Now, let our forum begin. I'm pleased to introduce our moderator, Ann Brandt.
Thank you, Laura. I'm delighted to be here, and on behalf of myself and all the people who will be tuning in into this forum, let me add our welcome and thanks to the candidates who were with us. The candidates have received the format and ground rules we will follow this evening. I will briefly review them here so that our viewers can anticipate the way the forum will proceed. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. This will be followed by the question and answer period, when candidates will have the opportunity to respond to questions prepared by Horizon House residents. Candidates will then have 1 minute to answer each question. At the end of the question and answer period, each candidate will have, in this case, we think 3 minutes for a closing statement. Since this is a forum, not a debate, there will not be a rebuttal opportunity. However, candidates may include such remarks in their closing statement, should they wish to. Candidates, please note, we will appreciate your honoring the signals of our timer. This will ensure we are fair to all of you and that we can cover as many topics as possible with our questions. Our timer, Adele Reynolds, with backup from Doris Ray, will give you an on-screen warning that will alert you when you have 15 seconds remaining. You will then get a signal to please finish. Any questions thus far?
No.
Okay. Now for your opening statement. This is the only question you have received in advance, so please include in your opening your response to this question. Why are you a candidate for this position? What are your goals and emphasis in this position? And how will you accomplish these goals? For your opening statement, you will be called in alphabetical order. So, Paul Glumaz, would you please begin?
I have to unmute. Okay, so I'm running for US Congress because our nation, I believe, is in the greatest financial and economic crisis in its history. And I believe some very critical changes will have to be made if we are going to make it as a nation. Unfortunately, I do not believe the current configuration in the US Congress is organized to defend the nation against the decades-long policies of the globalists and the international corporations and the financial institutions, whose decades of plundering and anti-economic development policies has brought us to this condition. I'm hoping that my campaign can help change that configuration, and that's why I'm running. Now, some of the things that I'm committed to dealing with are inflation, which robs our wages and savings, or its opposite twin, a deflationary collapse, which plunges us into a depression. These things are inevitable under the current financial system. The Federal Reserve System, with its trillions and trillions being created to bail out the banks and the international corporations, is at the center of this. So I believe reform is needed. Something like what Franklin Delano Roosevelt did to channel credit into rebuild and employ the nation in productive activity. Okay, I believe in foreign policy, we must end the regime change wars that have been going on for a long time. I think that's very important, and that's what I'm hoping to be able to activate in Congress. I also believe that we must end the financialization of medicine, which could cut healthcare costs by half. And lastly, we need to stop the flow of fentanyl and human slave trafficking by closing the border. So those are the kind of things that I want to bring up in Congress.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. And now, Pramila Jayapal.
Good evening. I'm Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, and it's my honor to have served you in Congress as your representative since 2017. I'm the first South Asian American woman to serve in the House, one of just 24 naturalized citizens, and one of only 87 women of color to ever serve in Congress. And I'm also proud to be the elected chair of the 100-member strong Congressional Progressive Caucus. I ran and I'm running again because I've spent my life as a leading advocate and organizer for women's rights, immigrant rights, and economic justice. I founded and led one of the largest immigrant rights groups in the state. I've worked in international public health around the world and helped craft the first major city agreement for a $15 minimum wage in Seattle. That's what I want to continue to do in Congress, is fight for working people and our most vulnerable and build real voice and power for us. During my short time in Congress, I've been an advocate for real solutions to the urgent crises facing this nation, including leading bills for Medicare for all, raising the federal minimum wage, getting money out of politics, ensuring collective bargaining rights for workers, and taking on climate change. And as a member of the Judiciary Committee, I've worked hard to ensure that our democracy survives the unprecedented attacks of January 6th and Donald Trump's big lie. I've also led on bills to codify abortion rights, same-sex marriage, and contraception against unprecedented attacks from an extremist Supreme Court. And finally, I always prioritize constituent services, returning over $6 million to my constituents here in the district and bringing home tens of millions of dollars for infrastructure projects and community-based projects across the district. Thanks to Democrats in Congress, we passed the American Rescue Plan and the biggest infrastructure investment in our history. We cut child poverty in half, and we brought unemployment down to the lowest level in half a century. We also negotiated to pass Build Back Better through the House, and as soon as we have one more Democratic senators vote, we will pass it in the Senate. I hope to continue to serve you. Thank you.
Thank you, Pramila. And now, Cliff Moon, it's your turn.
All right. My name is Cliff Moon. I'm a businessman. I'm over 25, resident of the state of Washington. I'm running because I'm not satisfied, or I'm not pleased with the way the current situation, the political arena is in the greater Seattle area. I want to see those who commit crimes be prosecuted for the crimes that they commit. They need to be accountable. I want to encourage stronger families. I want to enable parents to be involved in the curriculum in their schools so that they have a choice in what their children are learning. I want to help reduce the costs of gasoline, groceries, and medications. I want to encourage or help maintain a freedom of speech so that what we listen to or what we say is available to all people. I want to be able to have friends and neighbors who are different ethnicities than I, and that we can pray together, we can talk together, we can work together. I'm for those kind of values. I think that we can enact laws and regulations that will contribute to those things that I would like to see accomplished. Thank you.
Thank you, Cliff. Turning now to the questions from Horizon House residents. Each candidate will have a minute to respond to each question, and I'll call on you in a rotating order. First question is, what are your top 3 legislative priorities? And we will begin with Paul Glumaz.
Hi. My first legislative priority is to deal with the Federal Reserve and put through legislation to reorganize the Federal Reserve into a national bank that could fund the development of the nation. My second legislative priority is to close the border and end the fentanyl and human trafficking situation. And my third is to end the financialization of medicine, which doubles the cost of medicine over what cost of healthcare over what other countries pay, where they don't allow the financialization of medical care. And that can be done by ending the for-profit insurance companies, and bringing big pharma to account to go after the price gouging of big pharma, which is the key. That's going to be the key to break their power over our healthcare system.
Thank you. Congresswoman Jayapal, you're next up.
Thank you. My top priorities are, number one, to reduce costs for American families. That's through reducing the cost of prescription drugs, is through providing universal childcare, universal pre-K, ending our for-profit healthcare system. All of those things are about reducing costs. Second, I want to protect rights. We are in a time where our democracy is at stake, and our right to vote, our right to have an abortion, our right to control our own reproductive care, to marry who we love, to even have access to contraception. Those are all on the line, and we need to protect those rights. And third, I want to provide opportunity. Look, I came here as a 16-year-old with nothing in my pocket, and I'm now serving as a member of Congress. But too many Americans across the country do not have those opportunities. We need to provide free college for everyone. We need to make sure we're investing in training programs. We need to build in America, have our factories and our jobs as living wage jobs, so that Americans wake up every day feeling more positive about their future than their parents did.
Thank you, Pramila. And Cliff, you're up now.
Right. I think that one of my priorities would be the school system. I think we need to make a mechanism for parents to be more involved in the curriculum in the schools. I think second, I would like to do something to stop the crime that we're seeing in the streets of Seattle from a congressional standpoint. And third, like Paul, I would like to see the border closed, because I think that's a source of drugs that are contributing to the homelessness in the greater Seattle area. Those would be my priorities.
Thank you. The second question is, as a member of the House of Representatives, how would you work with other members who have differing views to pass legislation? Pramila Jayapal, you're up first.
Thank you. Well, you've seen it already. I passed 2 bills last year, including one with Republicans, bipartisan support, signed into law by the president, that would end forced arbitration in cases of sexual assault. That's 30 million people, women across the country, that would be protected. I also passed a bill to provide resources for sexual assault nurses. It was also a bill sponsored with Patty Murray. And again, bipartisan support. I just introduced a bill with a Republican from Utah that is around preventing gun suicides. And we hope to be able to bring that to the floor and pass it for Suicide Prevention Month in September. But at the end of the day, I believe you don't have to agree with everyone on 100% of everything. You just have to look for the opportunities. And at the same time, I do have to say that most of the Republicans and the Republican Party as a whole have been incredibly difficult to work with, and it has been a real challenge. And I would just point out my two opponents are both Republicans.
Thank you, Pramila. And next up for this question is Cliff Moon.
My business experience enables me to deal with a lot of different peoples and their backgrounds and their views, and I really feel that I'm able to reach across to nearly anybody and talk with them, listen to them, process how their views and how we can move forward on something. I have no doubt that I could work with someone of another party to come to a consensus on what would be best for the nation as well as best for the District 7. And I think District 7 would be my priority, of course, to see how we can benefit that and how we can work across the aisle.
Thank you. And Mr. Glumaz?
Okay, I'm want to get into Congress. I want to go to Congress because I have a unique capability to discuss the conjunctural crisis that the country is in with the other members of the House of Representatives. And we are in a conjunctural crisis. That is, you cannot resolve the current crisis of inflation and deflation and the disintegration of our economy, supply chain problems, and the fact that the dollar is losing will lose very rapidly its basis as a reserve currency. You need to have somebody who can actually discuss and propose policies that are similar to what Lincoln did, to what FDR did, to what Kennedy proposed, in order to get this country's physical economy moving productively. And just handing out money isn't going to do it. You have to engage the productive powers, and you got to have a different system to do that. And that's the crisis we're in. And I'm uniquely capable of carrying on that dialogue in the Congress.
Okay, thank you. Your third question, and we're kind of jumping around here. How should Congress respond to the recent decisions of the Supreme Court? In your answer, please highlight which of these recent decisions are of most concern to you, if any of them are. Let's start with Mr. Cliff Moon.
I support the Supreme Court. I mean, these are men and women who have years of experience in the judicial environment, and whether or not I like their decision, I have to go by that. I'm willing to accept that. I may not like what they've done, and there may be ways to get to change that, but that's what Congress is for, to be able to change the laws that they've enacted or to clarify them. My hat's off to the men and women of all the judicials, even the Supreme Court as well. So I have to stand by what they've gone by, what they've chosen, their decisions.
Fair enough. And Mr. Glumaz?
Okay, the most radical decision that the Supreme Court has done is on repealing or overthrowing Roe versus Wade on the question of the constitutionality of abortion, of the right to have an abortion, that is not in the Constitution. And I view this decision and the responding result of in the population as creating a tremendous diversion of attention from the crisis that the nation faces. So you get both sides going at it, and that to me is completely diverting the attention to the realities of what's happening internationally with the wars that are going on and with the financial situation. So I see that as a profound problem, not because of what the Supreme Court did, but because of the response to the Supreme Court.
Thank you, Mr. Glumaz. Pramila Jayapal, your turn.
This is an extremist, radical, Republican-controlled Supreme Court. We should be clear about that. This Supreme Court has overturned half a century of precedent, settled precedent that generations of women have grown up thinking that we have control over our own bodies. And now we are being told by this Supreme Court that we will have to have forced births, that we will have to carry a pregnancy to its conclusion, regardless of the health of the mother, regardless of rape or incest. And you can see that extremist view of Republicans reflected in what governors and states are now doing, including in Texas, where I recently was. But it isn't just abortion. The Supreme Court has also signaled, and governors and Ted Cruz, senators, Republicans have also signaled that this is not the end. 195 Republicans voted against codification of access to contraception in the House. And so there is a lot that needs to be done. I hope this is more than a 1-minute answer, but we can expand the court. We can do a number of things, and we should eradicate the filibuster, which has created the vacuum that the Supreme Court has stepped into.
Thank you. Another issue that seems to be of great concern to people today has to do with the Electoral College. So the question is, should the Electoral College law be reformed? And if so, how? We'll begin with Mr. Paul Glumaz.
Okay. I am very grateful for the Electoral College law because it puts into place mechanisms that prevent a pure democracy or a pure democracy situation. So, for instance, in the last election, the Constitution was followed, regardless of what actually happened in the election, and that's why you have an electoral college for that purpose. And you know, we've been saved many times by the Electoral College, especially in the Jefferson versus the first 1800s. We were saved by the Electoral College. Aaron Burr was a traitor, and he would have been president.
Okay, thank you. Pramila Jayapal, you're next.
Two things. One that is going to happen, I think, and one that I think will take a while. I think the Electoral College needs to be reformed so that presidents are elected by the popular vote, not by the Electoral College. This is an outdated system, and we've ended up with a number of Republican presidents who have been elected president with a minority of the vote. And I just don't think that is what should happen. Second, and I think this one will happen soon, the way in which Electoral College votes are counted does need to be changed, as we saw on January 6th with the attempts by Donald Trump and the Republican Party to steal the election and overturn a fair and free election. So that is happening now, where there will be no opportunity for the vice president, for example, to be clear that the vice president does not have the power to overturn the ability of votes that have been counted and certified by the electors in states, and hopefully will also ban the practice of fake electors, as Donald Trump and his people tried to use in the last election.
Thank you. Mr. Moon.
Electoral College enables small populations to have an equal voice. If you change the Electoral College, then big cities or populous states will control government. And I'm not in favor of that. I want everybody to have a voice. Electoral College is a way to do that. I would not reform it. Thank you.
Okay. Turning to question 5. Do you support the passage of a federal law to protect access to abortion? Pramila Jayapal, you're up first.
Absolutely, I do. We have already passed the Women's Health Protection Act in the U.S. House of Representatives, with all Democrats voting for it, and that is a priority for Democrats. I am one of the 1 in 4 women across this country who has had an abortion. Nobody, and certainly not Supreme Court or the government, should be able to tell me that I can or can't do something with my own body, specifically having to be forced into birth. That is not anything. And frankly, I don't want to tell people that they should have an abortion. I don't think anybody should tell me that I can't have one. This is settled law. These Supreme Court justices, the 5 Supreme Court justices who ruled in this case, were all appointed by presidents who lost the popular vote. Some of them lied under oath to the Senate during their confirmation hearings in saying that they considered settled law to be settled law. So absolutely, we should codify it, and the House has already passed that bill. Now we need the Senate to do the same.
Thank you. Mr. Cliff Moon, what is your thought about this?
I would not codify it. My youngest daughter was in a situation which she became pregnant on an unwedded mother. She changed her mind. The result was that I have a grandson, mid-20s, who's skillful welder, who has helped keep Washington state ferries in operation. I'm opposed to abortion.
That's clear. Thank you. Turning now to question 6. Should Congress pass affordable, accessible,
Did Mr.
quality
Glumaz
healthcare?
answer the last question? I'm sorry.
I beg your pardon. What did I miss something?
Ms. Paul.
I beg your pardon. Mr. Glumaz. That's the first one tonight. It probably won't be the last.
Okay.
I do apologize.
I have a problem with a positive law granting a universal right to an abortion. If all women decided to have an abortion, that would be the end of the human race. And whether they should have an abortion or not have an abortion, whether they have the right to abortions or not right to abortions, or whether the embryos at whatever stage is a human being and at what point and all of that, that is something that you should not put into a law. Abortions occur, they're going to continue to occur. That's not the issue. The issue is making it a right. Like a woman can abort up until birth. That's not right. That's not a right. That's not a right. It can happen. It does happen. State legislatures pass such bills to make it happen, but you don't want to make it a universal right.
Okay, and again, my apologies and thank you for catching me on that one. Now we can turn to the 6th question. Should Congress pass affordable, accessible, quality healthcare for all? And we'll start with Mr. Cliff Moon.
Wow, I don't think government should be involved in the healthcare system. I think that you should be able to get health care, the insurance across borders. I don't feel comfortable about the government involvement. I'm on Medicare, and it's a challenge to get services when I think I need 2 or 3 months to get to see a specialist. Come on, that's government involved in healthcare. I'm not in favor of that. I want the best. I want it when I need it, not later.
Okay. Mr. Glumaz.
I'm not opposed to a single payer. I've actually, over the years, just over 30 years, I've been in favor of a single payer system. But that's not because it's the government. It's because I thought that was the way to prevent the health maintenance organizations and the big pharma from looting the population through overpricing the medical care. However, I am reluctant at this point to support the single payer system until I have seen what it actually does in terms of the ability to deliver services. I don't know, given the collapse of our physical economy, I don't know if they can deliver the kind of services that they could have, 30 years ago. So I will try to get the the price gouging out of the system by going after the big pharma and the health insurance companies and making them not-for-profit. I want not-for-profit insurance companies.
Okay, thank you. Pramila Jayapal.
Absolutely. Every American should have the right to health care. It is not a privilege. It should be a right. And so that is why I'm the lead sponsor of the Medicare for All bill in the House. It's why we've held numerous hearings for the first time in history on expanding Medicare so that it can cover all Americans, so that there's just one insurance card that you carry across everything. And you don't have to fight with insurance companies all the time. And you can actually get the services that you need. No copays, no deductibles, no private insurance premiums. We spend as a country the most money on healthcare as a percentage of GDP of any country in the world. And yet we have the highest maternal mortality. We have the lowest tenure of life, and we have the highest child mortality rates in the world. This is just untenable. It's because our healthcare system today is a profit-making machine, and we can do better. And with the Affordable Care Act, we began that process, but now we have to finish it, hopefully with a single payer system.
Thank you. Question number 7. Should Congress address income inequality in America, for example, by reenacting the child care tax credit? Cliff Moon, would you take this one first, please?
Income inequality. I think you're always going to have it. There's no way around it. I don't know that, I think that you're going to see there's a hierarchy in income, and some of it's well-deserved. You know, you pay a doctor, a good doctor for what he's worth, an attorney for what he's worth, a carpenter, a plumber. You can't make equality, you can't make income equality across those bases if you want quality and skilled positions. Help for childcare, absolutely, if we can. I'd like to see how that materializes.
Okay, Pramila Jayapal.
We have the greatest wealth and income inequality since the Great Depression in the United States. And it's because the vast majority of money in this country is going to the smallest percentage of the wealthiest individuals and wealthiest corporations. That's why I'm very proud that the Speaker appointed me to the Select Committee on Inequality and Disparity. And in fact, we have a field hearing coming up here in Seattle at the beginning of August. And we have been working on a number of ways to reduce that inequality. The child tax credit cut poverty in half. We cut hunger by 32% in just 1 year by actually prioritizing those who are most vulnerable, putting money in their pockets so they could feed their kids and have a decent life. There are a number of things, from raising the minimum wage, which would increase the wages of 32 million of the poorest Americans across this country, to ensuring collective bargaining rights, to actually cracking down on corporate monopolies and using antitrust, strengthened antitrust laws that we must do if we want to promote a truly equitable society.
Thank you. Mr. Glumaz.
Okay, what Pramila said about the income inequality is absolutely the case, if not an understatement. But you're not going to change it by just trying to redistribute the financially. Yes, I'm for the child credit, but that's not going to solve the problem. You have to produce, you have to create physical wealth. If you redistribute what appears to be the financial wealth, you still are going to have massive poverty. You're still going to have, because you got to create wealth, and we haven't been creating wealth. We've been living off the rest of the world, because of the dollar. We've been living off of the poor around the world. We're not really creating wealth. We have to get our people engaged in the productive activity. That's how we're going to deal with that income inequality. And also, if we take on the Federal Reserve, that's going to do a lot to change that situation.
Okay. Next question. What additional actions should Congress take to address climate change? Let's start with Paul Glumaz.
Okay. The scientific claims of imminent climate catastrophe through global warming are very contentious. There are many different views on this. If indeed the climate catastrophe scenario is true, and decarbonization through eliminating the use of fossil fuels is what we have to do, then why have not the best and the brightest on this and the largest financial institutions and corporations been who are promoting the green finance initiative, why haven't they been promoting nuclear power for the last 20 years if they actually think that that's what's going on? No, they haven't. Therefore, we are now starting to see the effects of the green policies in terms of collapse of nations in Africa. We're seeing the beginnings of famine because of these green policies, because you can't take fossil fuels out if you're not going to replace it with something like nuclear power. And you can't, and they're not doing that. And so this is genocide.
Pramila Jayapal.
Climate change is very real. It is urgent. It is an existential threat. The vast majority of the world recognizes it. Only here in the United States do we continue to act like it's somehow a myth. Meanwhile, vulnerable communities, Black, Brown, Indigenous communities across our country and across the world are going underwater with floods. We are seeing record wildfires, heat waves, all kinds of things that are killing people and will continue to kill people. What we need to do is immediately invest, put $500 billion as we negotiated, as I negotiated into the Build Back Better Act, into ensuring decarbonization, a transition to a green economy that has electric vehicles, that replaces the power grid, that ensures that we are actually putting 40% of all our investments into the most vulnerable communities. That will get us to a starting place where we could actually decarbonize with good union jobs across the country and justice for those who are most disproportionately affected.
Thank you. And Mr. Cliff Moon.
Climate legislation is, I want to go down that is kind of a luxury for the well-to-do. I mean, they enact they want to enact legislation, but still drive their cars, still fly their airplanes. It hurts those who are on the ground. It hurts us who are tradesmen. It's not beneficial to us. It's only beneficial to them. I think that what Paul said is that there's a lot of contentious about it. And the U.S., what we would do would be such a small percentage towards solving global issues it's not going to work. I think we need other countries to step up. They're one of the biggest polluters. So we need to work this. This needs to be thought out more before we proceed with that.
Okay. Question number 9. Should Congress do more to help local governments deal with public concerns about crime? If so, what do you suggest? And we'll start with Pramila Jayapal.
Thank you. This is very important. We have passed the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which will bring accountability to police departments across the country and ensure that we don't have police officers sitting on the neck of a Black man for 8.5 minutes until he dies. That's what happened to George Floyd. We must ensure that accountability for our police departments, because I think there are a lot of police officers who want to be helping the community. Second, we need to invest in our communities and community safety, community investments with jobs, ensuring that people actually have the things that they need to live fulfilling lives. And third, we should make sure that our law enforcement is actually working on violent crimes, not having to deal with issues that really require community investments like mental health and ensuring housing. Those are things that can be done with other resources. Let's allow our law enforcement to focus on law enforcement, and let's invest in community so that we can actually create opportunity for everyone.
Thank you. Cliff Moon?
It appears to me that many of the well, particularly the Seattle area, that district, the council has allowed for self-destruction of of the people. They're doing away with the police, or they're reducing the police force. They're encouraging, they're allowing drug use to go rampant, and it's going to take, we need to bring Congress, I think from the congressional level, we need to come down hard on these cities and like Seattle, to force them to prosecute make those who commit crimes accountable for what they do.
Okay, Mr. Paul Glumaz.
The federal government doesn't really have a say directly in law enforcement functions at the state and local level. But the federal government can activate a serious war on drugs. And I don't mean rounding up people. I mean going after the banking behind it, going after the cartels, and at the same time, encourage a return to encourage, but it's up to the local governments to, through their prosecutors and their city attorneys and their elected officials, to determine what kind of policies should be adopted. Personally, I am the defunding of the police and the creation of a social infrastructure to deal with crime is a big mistake. You deal with crime by punishment and by going to prison and by getting people off drugs. That's how you deal with crime. You don't deal with crime by having social work programs that allow the criminal to go to do whatever they want.
Okay. Turning now to our 10th question. We're shifting emphasis a little bit. The question is, what can Congress do to help reduce inflation? And we'll start with Mr. Paul Glumaz.
Congress has to abolish the Federal Reserve and replace it with a national bank. Otherwise, it's going to get worse. And if you don't have inflation, you're going to have a crash. And that's the way it is. That's been building for 50 years. The financialization, which is the gambling casino of the global gambling casino, quadrillions of dollars of nominal value of derivatives, is at the center of the financial system. And since 2008, there's been a massive bailout. You can't deal with it. Congress has to create a national bank to fund the development of the country. You have to take the Federal Reserve and nationalize it. There is no other way. You're not going to get away with it. It's just going to get much worse, and it's going to continue to get much worse. And that's the reality. So that's what Congress has to do. And Congress, the Federal Reserve is unconstitutional. Only Congress has the right to create money on Article 1, Section 5, Clause 5 through the Treasury. And that's where you have to go.
Okay. Pramila Jayapal.
By some estimates, about 60% of inflation is due to profiteering by corporations. So we have to stop the price gouging, first of all. And I am a sponsor of a windfall profits tax on major oil companies, as well as another overall profiteering price gouging bill that addresses all industries to say, stop the price gouging. And for oil companies, a windfall profits tax would ensure that they do not continue to raise the prices at the pump, even as their own cost of cost of gas is going down. So that's number one. Number two, we need to actually address other costs for American consumers. That's why I think we need to have universal childcare, universal pre-K. We can raise wages. I've lived on a fixed income budget, and I know if one thing is going up in your budget, you need to make sure that other things are going down. So that's another way that we can deal with this. And again, we've got to end the war in Ukraine, the Russian war in Ukraine, because at the end of the day, there are big supply chain issues around the world that are affecting us here with rising inflation.
Thank you. Mr. Cliff Moon.
Wow, in my in my construction business for the last 50 years, we don't see obscene profit. We're restricted in our contracts on how much profit we receive. Like Paul, I don't see how taking from those who have excessive profits and passing them down those people spend their money locally so that the money it trickles down. I think inflation's tough. I think we need to reduce some taxes. A lot of the inflation is related to taxes. Gas, for example. Let's eliminate that for a period of time until we get this under control. It affects us all.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Do you support banning or limiting the ownership and sale of military assault weapons and ammunition? We'll begin with Pramila Jayapal.
Absolutely, I do. I serve on the Judiciary Committee. We just had, I think, what was a 12 or 14-hour hearing on assault weapons ban, and we passed it through the committee, and I hope to be able to vote for it on the floor this week. I will tell you that no parent should go and have to pick through the remains of DNA just to be able to identify their child, as happened in Uvalde. No person in the United States should worry that when they go to a movie theater that they're going to be attacked by weapons of war. That's what these assault weapons are. And personally, my own legislative staffer in DC saw her father shot to death by a person who had purchased an assault rifle just 3 hours prior to shooting and killing him in a hospital. And Dr. Phillips worked here and practiced here in Seattle for 8 years. So we dearly miss him. And this simply should not be the case. Let's ban the assault weapons. Let's get the weapons of war off our streets.
Cliff Moon.
Disagree. I think that if you're going to be, there need to be a mechanism by which responsible people purchase weapons. When I was in high school at the naval base at Guantanamo, they took us out of high school, taught us how to use military weapons, and that enabled us to, if necessary, to protect the base. I haven't owned a gun in many, many, many years, but I'm not opposed to those who do. I think maybe the background check being more detailed or more strong across the borders would be helpful. But responsible ownership also comes from family overseeing their children, or if it's a younger age. So let's keep it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Glumaz, Paul Glumaz.
The assault ban will not change the situation with respect to the access to weapons by criminal organizations and organized crime. There's a black market. They'll be able to get the weapons. That's not going to be a problem. No laws are going to stop that. But if you can prevent law-abiding citizens from having weapons, well, then what are they going to protect themselves with as the society disintegrates, as crime increases, as police stop enforcing the laws, as prosecutors stop prosecuting? How are individuals going to survive? How are they going to protect themselves if they're not going to be, if law enforcement isn't going to protect them? And we are watching a disintegration of our society. So can you blame people for wanting to have guns under these circumstances? So you want to take away their guns so the criminals can have a monopoly?
Okay, thank you. There are some questions that are coming up that are really related to our local situation here in the Northwest. And the first one is, do you support the removal of federal dams on the lower Snake River? This has been in the press, major issue here in the Puget Sound area. What is your view? Let's begin with Cliff Moon.
I don't support the removal of the dams. It provides a low cost, low environmental impact for electricity in the Pacific Northwest. I wouldn't, we can encourage, if we're taking these dams down because of the salmon runs, then we need to make a mechanism to help the fish passage. But we need the electricity, and we need that power source. So I would not remove the lower dams.
Okay, and Mr. Glumaz.
I would not remove the lower dams at all. And if you want to help the salmon, you dredge the rivers. That's the best thing you can do for the salmon. Then, and the ecology department of Washington State won't allow you to dredge the rivers for the most part. So I mean, the salmon problem is not caused by the dams, okay? But it is a way of impoverishing the population, increasing the energy costs. It is a way of cutting off energy to the population. And I think it's very bad. It's a very bad policy. And then, but all for what? For the salmon that the dams is not the cause of the problem with the salmon. So why do we do that? Why are we going to do that? I don't know. I can't figure it out. Why they want to do something so stupid.
Okay. Pramila Jayapal.
Well, as you may know, there is a stakeholder group around this issue that's been convened by the governor and by Senator Murray, really looking at which dams could be removed, what environmental impact would it have, because understand that some of these dams are not particularly effective anymore, and they are doing tremendous harm. So I think we are waiting for the conclusion of that stakeholder group. I think it is a very important issue. And we have seen that dam removal, that there are many effective ways to ensure that water gets to where it needs to get to, and at the same time that we protect our salmon and our species. We know that dam removal does help salmon runs, and we know that we need to make sure that we do this in a way that is protective of our environment and also maintains what is important, low cost of hydropower. So I think we can get there, and I do think it will involve the removal of some dams, but we need to make sure we're doing it in a way that is thoughtful, and I think that's exactly what's happening right now.
Okay, thank you. Second issue, and your next question is, what measures would you support to increase protection of the Puget Sound habitat? Let's start with Mr. Cliff Moon.
Wow. I don't have a real answer for you.
Well, I guess the question in part is, do you think that Congress has a role in supporting an increase in protection of the Puget Sound habitat?
I don't see how Congress can do that. It's going to be a population issue. You know, the greater Seattle area is increasing in population. It's going to be hard to do more than what we're currently doing. We're years ago, back in the 70s, we removed the raw sewage into Puget Sound. We're working on similar things in the Green River. I just don't see how we're going to do that. So yeah,
Okay.
Not the congressional level. Yeah.
Mr. Paul Glumaz?
Okay, there's a problem with the whole situation, because there's a lot of graft going on where if you try to do something, you try to build something, you have to go through all of these experts and all of these things. And it's a scam to some degree. To some degree, it's not. So you end up paying all these monies to all these experts and everything, and then the ecology department approves you or doesn't approve you. So it's a way, it's a new form of unelected government, which is what you have with the, controlling habit. Yes, you have to clean up the messes. Yes, you have to deal with the raw sewage. Yes, you have to deal with those kind of things. But when you give the power to other agencies to be able to control how things are used, and then that becomes a basis for a bureaucratic structure that essentially stops all development. And that's exactly what's been going on all over the state. The development is stopped. And that's what's been happening.
Okay. And Pramila Jayapal.
Well, anyone that thinks that Congress can't do anything about this really doesn't understand what Congress does. We have appropriated since 2006 over $419 million in grants from the Clean Water Act specifically towards ensuring that the Puget Sound habitat is maintained. Through the bipartisan infrastructure bill, we were able to get $89 million specifically for Puget Sound habitat restoration and to meet our tribal and treaty obligations, to ensure wildlife diversity, and a whole host of things. On top of that, the EPA in I think it was December of 2021 allocated another $31 million, I believe, specifically for the Puget Sound. So our job in Congress, my job as your representative, has been to advocate for federal dollars that allow us to do the kind of preservation, diversity maintenance, tribal and treaty obligations, all of those things. And I'm really proud to have delivered so much in resources and expertise for the 7th Congressional District.
Thank you. Next question. Do you support a path to citizenship for Daca members of our society? And we'll start with Mr. Glumaz.
I'm not clear on this at all. The question of our immigration policies, the question of citizenship policies have become very complex. Whether it's H-1B visas, whether it's Daca, whether it's people who come in illegally and so forth. I'm in the process of studying the whole thing and thinking through how you would actually deal with all of these things. It's a very complicated situation, and it involves many, many different things, many, many different aspects. So I'm looking into it. So I really don't have formulated a policy on it, and this is part of the whole immigration package. And the open borders are part of it, and the politics is also part of it, in terms of future voters and things like that. So anyhow, I'm looking into it.
Thank you. Pramila Jayapal.
I've worked on immigration for over 20 years. I know it inside out. I understand the law. I understand all the problems with our current outdated immigration laws. We're not talking about H-2A workers. We're not talking about anything else. The question was about Daca. 42 million immigrants across this country currently are Daca recipients. They absolutely should have a path to citizenship. Why would we allow these incredibly talented young people to get an education here in the United States, contribute so much on the front lines of our healthcare crisis during COVID, be in the military serving our country, and yet insist that they're going to live in the shadows with uncertainty, with instability, or send them home? We can pass the DREAM Act. We can ensure that these Daca recipients have a path to citizenship and are able to continue to contribute to our country. That is the minimum of what we need to do. But I'm also working towards comprehensive immigration reform, and I can tell you every component of it if we had the time.
Thank you. And Cliff Moon, what is your thought about this?
No, I agree. I think that there should be a pathway to these people who have been there for so many years. They have contributed to our society. They've contributed to, even our local area. So I like to look at that pathway a little bit, with others and see what's best. But no, I'd be in favor of some type of a pathway to citizenship for that group of people.
And the last question for the evening, given our time, is should Congress enact a reparations program for descendants of enslaved persons? We'll begin with Pramila Jayapal.
Absolutely, we should. We have a bill that is a study committee for reparations to really dive into this issue, figure out what it looks like. It's HR 40. Representative Sheila Jackson Lee and Representative Barbara Lee both have pieces around this. Look, I think we are a country that still has not recognized what role we played in allowing slavery to continue in our history. This is an important part of moving forward. We need a Truth and Reconciliation Commission that actually allows people to tell these stories and recognizes the truth of our history. And I believe that we can use that Truth and Reconciliation Commission, use a reparations study commission to figure out exactly how we move forward, bring people together, but while recognizing the harm that has been done and the inequity and the injustice that has been done to Black enslaved people, our descendants, and the current group of people who still suffer from so many of the impacts of that.
Thank you. Cliff Moon.
And I should mention, sorry, because my time is up. I should just mention that it is actually one of our priorities of the Congressional Progressive Caucus legislative priorities. If you look at our agenda, it is very much on there. And we're so proud that both Representatives Barbara Lee and Sheila Jackson Lee are part of the CPC.
Okay. Cliff Moon.
I'm not in favor of repartitions. It would, it's a slippery slope. My grandparents were Nez Perce Indians. You don't see anything for them. We've put Irish into slavery in the early years of our history. Chinese, Black. I mean, I certainly see that we can look back and see what we can do, but I don't see any financial repercussions that need to go back to any ethnic group, mine included. Thanks.
Okay. And Mr. Glumaz.
Well, I see three problems with it. The first is, are the reparations for the poor whites who suffered under the slave system almost as bad as the slaves themselves? The brutality in the South during the slavery is just amazing. And many of those people are still in that same condition. Is there reparations for them? Secondly, administering such a thing would be almost impossible, because on what basis are you going to be able to determine who is really qualified? Are you going to do genetic tests on 50 million people, 60 million people, 80 million? Yes, it's totally cockeyed. And then that's not how you're going to create the wealth to be able to sustain anything like that. I'm for some kind of giving somebody some benefit, college education or whatever, because of all of this. But where's the wealth going to come from? Since we're shutting down the economy, we're increasing inflation. Where's the wealth going to come from for all of this? And that's the whole point. So those are the three things.
Okay. I want to thank you all. We've actually made it through the list of questions, with each of you doing a marvelous job of minding the time. And I know how hard that is when there's so much to say about so many of these subjects. What we are going to do now is move to the final part of the forum, your closing statements. And as I noted at the beginning of the session, because there are only 3 of you instead of 4, we are going to expand the time you will have for your closing statements from 2 minutes to 3 minutes. And I'm going to ask our timer, Adele, if that's okay. Okay, we got the thumbs up there. So each of you will have 3 minutes for your closing statements. You'll be called on in reverse order to your opening statements. So if you're ready, let's begin with Mr. Cliff Moon, followed by Pramila Jayapal, then Mr. Glumaz. Mr. Moon?
I am a hard worker. I've provided for my family. I've worked many jobs. I've been a tradesman. I've been a journeyman iron worker. I'm in the commercial construction industry. I think that our moral compass has been displaced and common sense has been exchanged for political correctness. Many have preached unity and diversity, but foster division. My mother-in-law is 98 years old. She's in an assisted living, North Carolina. One of your residents has been a lifelong friend to her. And she said to me when I talked to her this afternoon, she said, Cliff, take common sense to Congress. And I intend to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jayapal.
Thank you so much. It's really been my honor to serve you as your representative for the last 6 years, and I would be so honored to get your vote to serve you again for the next 2 years. You've heard my story. I came to the United States when I was 16 years old by myself. I never in a million years imagined that I would be serving in the United States Congress. I've served as an activist for 20 years, but I decided that I would have the opportunity to really bring organizing to the inside of Congress. And I hope you've seen what we've been able to do to move public opinion, both on the outside and on the inside, to ensuring that people have what it takes to succeed. When I came to America, it was because I believed that this country would give opportunity to me and people like me that we couldn't get anywhere else. And what's happened instead is that wealth and income has gone to a very small group of people, and the vast majority of Americans don't feel that opportunity that I had. So that's why I'm going to continue to fight so hard for you in Congress to make sure that we expand Medicare, provide healthcare, provide higher education, give people the opportunity that allows them to contribute their full selves to our country and to our communities. And that's why I've been such a leader on critical bills like Medicare for all, college for all, but also getting money out of politics. I don't take a single penny of corporate PAC money. And when I said I wasn't going to do it back in 2016, I was one of only 3 members of Congress to do that. And the reality is, I think we've got too much money in politics. This is not how it should work, with fossil fuel companies and the largest corporations essentially taking over our elections. We need to give the power of the vote to the people. And that's why I've helped move the For the People Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, so many bills through the House of Representatives that are about our fundamental values. And I'll just end with this. Liz Cheney has done a phenomenal job on the January 6th committee. I was in the gallery and I was trapped there, and people were coming to kill me and my colleagues. And very few Republicans in Congress are willing to speak up and say that Joe Biden is the legitimate president of the United States, that Donald Trump was trying to promote a big lie and fueled an insurrection. So everything is at stake, and the Republicans have shown us exactly what direction they want to go in. So my belief is that we need people who will stand up, who will fight for you, and who will find opportunities to work across the aisle, across the caucus, to deliver opportunity and to ensure that we preserve our democracy. I hope I can earn your vote on Tuesday, and I thank you again for giving me the great honor of serving you in Congress.
Thank you. And Mr. Paul Glumaz, your turn.
Okay, I came to the United States when I was 9 years old, and I grew up in an African-American community. And I was in the Black Baptist Church for a while. I was often the only Caucasian-looking child in the public school system, but I never identified with America, the general white population of America. However, my interest from an early age was, how do you deal with poverty? The thing that really made me become political and also made me concerned is I could see the poverty in Mexico there, and I saw the poverty in Washington, D.C. And that became my all-consuming interest. And when I went to Columbia, I studied cultural anthropology and economic anthropology. And what I basically discovered is that you need to industrialize to create the level of wealth to sustain a living standard that is above the level of what we call severe poverty. That's the whole point. The Industrial Revolution was the key to increasing the living standards of the populations of the world. And now I see this massive attack on industrial development. I see the country not developing because of corporations, because of financialization, because of all the things that people talk about, but it's not happening. We're not investing in maintaining. So our poverty is increasing. We're totally dependent on the rest of the world for goods. We have $1 trillion trade surplus, and that's we're not going to be able to do that much longer. And it's going to be horrible. We have to change the direction of the country towards a leapfrogging of industrial development with the most advanced technologies. We have to do that. And that's why I'm running for office. And the current grouping in the Democratic Party, which I used to be a part of, is opposed to that. They don't want that. They want to shut down fossil fuels. What are they going to replace fossil fuels with? Well, solar and windmills. Well, solar and windmill is not going to increase the development of the nation. It's going to decrease it massively. So we're at a dead end, and somebody has to go to Congress to deal with that, and that's why I'm running for office. Now, I do want to say one thing in reference to the Daca. I am in support of a pathway. I'm just not sure about all the other things related that are going on. So I want to make that clear too. However, that's why I'm doing this. We have to go to the next level of industrial development. We cannot just, Seattle is a perfect place. We have the science and technology. We need to go in that direction. And that's why I'm running for office.
Thank you very much. And while I have just a minute, I want to thank all of you for participating before I turn this over to our committee co-chair, Laura Weese. I do thank you. And I think that even though the time constraints were hard, people who are viewing this will have a very good idea of what each of you bring to this race, and are so grateful to you for agreeing to participate. Okay, Laura, take it away. You need to unmute yourself.
Thank you.
There you go.
Am I back on now? Yeah.
You are.
Well, I just said to thank you so much to Ann. I thought she did a wonderful job of moderating and getting to everybody equally. There were a lot of questions, and I really think we learned a lot. So thank you to the candidates, first of all. And I have to give you credit for running for public office in these very contentious times. So appreciate that. And I also wanted to give credit to those people working behind the scenes. Risa Ransom, who's our events program manager here at Horizon House, has been the technical director and kept us live and on Zoom. Jenny Stimpson created and managed the slides. Dell Reynolds was our timer with Doris Ray as the backup. So thanks to them. And most important, I want to say to the audience that the really important people in all this is you, because you are the voters and you have the power to decide which candidate should represent you in Washington, D.C. in the House of Representatives, a very awesome role. So be sure you get your ballot in the mail or drop box by August 2nd. Thanks very much and good night.